Hi, guys. It's Krystle Chats here, and this is episode 9 of the Healthy Gossip. And today is a very special episode for me. Also, before we get into it, I do want to say we are at the Comedy Pop-Up, and we have Alex Kahn, our on-air producer, in his house, and we are going to get this party started. My guest today is you're kind of a big deal.
Am I?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Go ahead and introduce yourself. This is Jaby Koay.
Yeah, everybody messes it up. It's okay. Jaby Koay. Yeah. What do you want me to say? I have a YouTube channel, a few YouTube channels, and predominantly an Indian audience on youtube.com/Jaby Koay, American on youtube.com/GetJaby, and then a small little Asian audience on youtube.com/JabyTV.
Okay.
So collectively, we're looking at about 1.1 million subscribers.
Collectively.
Yeah.
So, Jaby here, the reason why he's so special to me is, first of all, let's talk about how we met.
It was quite random.
Okay, so I used to date this guy who lives in Sherman Oaks.
Yeah.
And there were gunshots going off.
Yes. So what happened was I was at home just chilling, minding my own business, and then my friend and neighbor who lives above me was like, "Do you hear that? Do you hear those gunshots?" I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then he forwarded me a text from Krystle Chats that says, "Does
Tweet.
anyone hear?"
Tweet.
Or sorry, a tweet. Does anyone else hear these gunshots? And I'm like, "Oh, no, but who's that?" I clicked on your profile, and then it turned out you were a funny lady. So then I hit you up. I'm like, "Do you want to be on my YouTube channel?" And you're like, "Okay, sure."
Exactly.
That
is how it happened. And you know, it's funny. That was probably the shortest relationship I've ever been in. And look at that. You're the best thing that came out of my last relationship.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No, you are.
At least I'm a pro for something, right?
Yeah, you really are.
You know.
Because I remember, we can talk about that now. Finally, I've talked about it a few times on my other podcast, Krystle Chats podcast. Basically, because I remember it was still so new about how him and I split. And I was like, I told him a lie, and let's just get into this part of my agenda here.
Okay.
I told a lie to my ex-boyfriend at the time.
Oh, I remember this story.
And I didn't want to say what the lie was.
I remember this.
They were like, "What is it?" And I was like, "Oh, it's too sleazy. I'm a sleaze bag. I'm a piece of shit." But basically, I was uncomfortable, which is so weird to say now, to tell my guy I was dating at the time that I was going to be staying at my boss's house, because my boss is a very successful businessman who's not old and single, which is really weird because it's such a professional relationship.
Also tall, dark, and handsome.
Yeah, tall, dark, and handsome. No kids, never been married, but super safe. And that is the one awesome thing I could say about my boss is I've never felt unsafe whatsoever in his presence. And
has he felt unsafe around you, though?
Absolutely, but who doesn't?
Okay.
Do you feel unsafe right now?
Very. I'm
You
sweating.
should.
I'm sweating.
I am too, but for other reasons. And so, and it was such a new relationship, and I also felt weird saying that I used this website called Trusted House Sitters to find a random stranger off the internet to stay in my apartment while I went to go travel in Asia for a month. And I already felt weird about that. So not only was I having this person come, so the guy on Trusted House Sitters said it was between myself and another lady. And I said, well, what's making you pick her over me? And he said, well, she's available a little bit sooner. And I was like, well, come sooner. I'll go stay at my boss's house. So I felt uncomfortable telling him that, and I didn't tell the truth about that. And then as soon as he found out, he freaked out and he's like, it's over. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And so the point of this story is Jaby and I were having a conversation about lies.
Mm-hmm. You know, I know that story that you just told, and I got lost as you were telling it. Is this audience the first? Is it the first time they're ever hearing this story?
Okay, which part were you lost at?
It was just kind of went back and forth a little bit. So you needed to play. You basically you're looking for a pet sitter,
and because I was going to travel in Asia,
right? And your pet sitter was going to stay at your place, and it was between you and one other person, and they chose you. They chose you because you said you can come sooner, and I'll stay at my friend's place, and your friend's your boss. and you didn't tell your boyfriend about that.
Correct.
Okay, that's all that was.
Yep.
And then your boyfriend's like, I'm done. And you were pissed because he didn't even try. He didn't even try to have a conversation about it. Mm-hmm. And you lied. Mm-hmm. That's what the
Yep.
whole separation
You
was about.
summarized that beautifully.
Yes. All right, cool. Just want to make sure. Podcast over. Just kidding. Go ahead.
So Jaby's really good at this if you haven't picked up on his 1.1 million followers. So he's going to basically carry this whole podcast.
No.
Okay?
But it's 1.2. I made a mistake earlier.
1.2. Oh, excuse me. We can.
I did my math wrong. I'm a terrible Asian. It's only
What kind
half.
of Asian are you?
I don't ever tell anybody. Ever since the beginning, I haven't told anyone. I used to have a different kind of YouTube channel where I was living with my girlfriend and her daughter, and we're mixed Asian ethnicities. And so I just said we're the Asian family, and people go, "What kind?" I'm like, "Well, I know that Asians." What a lot of people who are not Asian don't realize is that Asians can be the most racist people ever, and so they have quarrels amongst themselves more than anyone else. And so I decided to take it upon myself to just keep it anonymous, to keep that a secret, so that basically we could be relatable to anybody. Whether you're Vietnamese, Japanese, Korean, whatever, like we could be relatable to you as an Asian family. It's generic.
I have two things to say.
Okay.
One, will you answer the question if you're mixed yourself?
I am, yeah, I say that I'm mixed. I say that my
Okay.
dad's Italian, I'll tell you that much. Because it's like my mannerisms are so obviously Italian, like, because Italians tend to gesticulate a lot, and so, yeah, I'll say that. You see,
Well, wait, it's funny. I'm a bad Asian. I'm a bad comic. I'm just bad at life, which I just roll with the punches. Well, I said bad because I didn't know who a comedian was. And
Sebastian.
I've never seen Alex be mad at me, but before we hit record, I didn't know who.
Sebastian Maniscalco.
It's a big comic. He's
Yeah.
Bill Burr in New York. Like
Yeah.
to Italian people, he's Joe Coy. We were talking about Joe Coy too. But
Okay.
Yeah, I've known him about him for
I
years.
felt Alex like.
no, I was just like, so I was kind of blown away. He's huge.
Yeah.
but
Okay.
Either way.
Yeah.
I'd lie if I said I hadn't seen his face before. But again, my acting coach used to give me shit all the time because there's so many classic movies that I hadn't seen. He's like, how do you call yourself an actress?
Well, the reason why Sebastian stuck out in my brain is because he was the kind of comic that wouldn't go straight for the sex joke. He went more for, like what Bill Burr does. He goes more for what makes him upset with the world at large, more than going for toilet humor, for that kind of under the belt humor. So
Do you have Showtime? Watch all of his stuff
my
today.
boyfriend does.
Watch all of it. You'll be his biggest fan. I guarantee you.
Oh, I will. I'm sure.
Okay.
Okay. I now that I actually have, I haven't had cable in years, but I do have Netflix, so I will. And now I believe I have access to cable. So.
lying.
Okay. Lying. We were having a conversation, and we were talking about. I was so upset about that story because I lied, but I didn't cheat. And your response was, or we went ahead and talked about a little bit about infidelity. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you said something along the lines of, if you cheat on me, just either stay with me and keep that in and never tell me the truth for the rest of our relationship, or still break up with me and never tell me the truth.
Yeah, I mean,
Do you agree with that, Alex?
I have a sort of a comical way of going about it. So my whole thing is this: if you let's say we're dating, and then you cheated on me, and then you came to me and said I cheated on you, you're making your problem my problem, and so now I have to carry the burden of your infidelity, and I have to deal with that in the next relationship where I go, is she going to cheat on me too? And it just makes you very insecure and uncertain. So my whole thing is, as long as you're not giving me a disease, I think I'll be all right at the end of the day. So my whole thing is either A, stop doing what you're doing and just keep that to yourself. You take that to the grave and never tell me a goddamn thing. Or B, end it and say that you're a lesbian. So,
the lesbian part's
Yeah.
the part that I messed up.
yeah, because the thing about it is, if another man is in the equation in my brain, even if you didn't tell me, there's some kind of ego tripping thing that happens. But if you tell me you're a lesbian, I can't compete with that. And so it's like, well,
Do you consider yourself an alpha?
people say I am, but
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Do you agree with?
The moment you asked me that question, I felt like a beta, but I think
That's the best. That's I don't know. That's hilarious.
That was gold.
No, yeah, I agree. So that's actually something that Victoria and I would argue about. And I feel the same way. Yeah, if you're making it my problem, now I have to live with your decisions. And typically, when people tell you, it's just to get it off their chest.
Exactly.
And I don't need pain for you to like. I have to feel pain for you to come to terms with your own. If you still want to be with me after that decision, suck up your pain, don't make it my pain, and continue to love me. But I'm also the kind of person, once cheating's involved, me personally, I'm like, oh, well, apparently we don't care enough anyway. Kind of like we've talked about it. You say this all the time, it's hell yes or it's no. So that's how I feel, is it's like, once I know you've cheated, then I know it's not hell yes. So if cheating made it a hell yes for you, keep it to yourself. If you've realized something from a moment that you had, a slip up you had, and you want to keep it going, yeah, let's do it. But I agree entirely.
I don't know if it's a faux pas to bring it up, but I listened to Bill Burr's podcast, and I've listened to him talk to his wife, and his
Not
wife
at all.
actually said the same thing. She was like, it's your problem. You saying it is just you getting it off your chest so you can feel better.
So his wife has gone on record and said, if you cheat on me, please don't tell me.
She never said that.
Okay.
But she basically was saying, you know, you confessing you're cheating is basically you just trying to alleviate your conscience.
Well, and I was always under the impression that if anything, besides, well, I'll use myself as an example. Like if I were to cheat and tell someone, it's only because I think there might be a chance that they're going to find out another way. That would probably be the only reason. If I knew there was never a way that they were going to find, there isn't a way that they weren't going to find out, then I'll keep it inside because they're never going to find out. But if I felt like maybe I have a friend that knows and they might tell them anyways or something like that, then
You'd rather them hear it from you.
right. And I'll be like, hey, I know this might end the relationship, but it's going to end anyways because you're going to find out.
So I feel in that situation, I say continue as like I'm also a firm believer. If I cheat, I'm not going to tell the other person because I practice what I preach. I don't want to give you the pain that I'm trying to deal with.
Right.
So I look at it as, if I cheat on you, I'm apparently not all there. I'm not in it. I'm not invested like I used to be. If I end things with you immediately after a cheating encounter,
It was already over.
then, well, one, it's already over, but two, even if people come back and tell you later and you find out from someone else and you come to me 3 years down the line and you go, I heard you cheating on me, be like, that's why I did the respectful thing and I terminated our relationship without hurting you. The breakup
Right.
hurts you enough. Me cheating on you hurts you tenfold. So,
Right.
like, I'm trying to, at this point, if you actually care about the person you're breaking up with, you owe it to them to let them down as easy as possible. I don't want to crush anyone on the way out of a relationship. You know what I mean? So,
Well, what do you think about this? That's kind of, to say it loosely, what the foundation of this whole podcast is about. Like getting things out. Like don't you think it would probably be unhealthy for a person, like even if they were madly in love with someone, it's like, ugh, like I don't know if I'd want to live with that. Like knowing that person in my brain, I'm hoping is going to be my best friend and lover, because like we were talking a little bit about that, how it's such a new day. Monogamy is such a interesting
I was just going to ask you
concept.
about that actually, like what your thoughts are on monogamy versus non-monogamy.
So I'm not the right person to ask because I haven't been in enough long-term relationships. So I feel from my experience on what I've spoke to a lot of people who are in marriages who have been married for 15 plus years, who always tell me you don't understand, because one guy specifically was an attorney and he made a pass at me and he's like, I love my wife, I have no intentions of leaving my wife, but there's just this
Chemistry.
spot in the
Yeah.
road that you hit where it's like, as I guess as a man, you guys do kind of want to like.
I don't think it's just men who go through that. I think men go through. I think
Absolutely.
men go through it more. But I think women go through it just as much as I think women go through it as well. Is what I mean to say. And so like I've up until the last few years I've been into back to back relationships over and over, long term, like we're talking 3-4 years. And so in my younger days I'd be like, oh my God, if you cheated it'd be over, it's a wrap. But now I'm like, I think I'm a little bit more understanding.
Okay.
There's a show on Netflix I recommend people to watch called Explained, at least the first episode, where it talks about monogamy. It's 20 minutes long. And it basically, at the end of it, it summarizes the idea that monogamy is a choice. It's not a biological predisposition. It's something we choose to do based on the constructs and confines of society and what they have laid upon us and raised us to believe.
Have you heard of Sex at Dawn?
No.
You've got to watch the author of that, his TED Talk. It's so short, sweet, to the point, and it explains basically what you just said. And so to finish about me personally, I don't know. I will say that in probably the 3 times that I may have been in love, I did not cheat because I didn't want to hurt that person, but I have cheated before. But I will say the people that I've cheated on, I kind of already knew that it wasn't going to last. I've never been in a situation where like, I'm madly in love with you and I'm so sorry I cheated. Never has that ever came out of my thought process or mind or actions or whatever. So, so you might ask, well, the last guy, well, if you loved him, how come it didn't last or whatever? Well, for other reasons it ended, but I will say that I never once thought, and until this day, I don't think I would have ever cheated on that guy. But we're not together and we'll never be together again. That's for damn sure. And the guy now I have so far, but so fresh.
Well, he kind of touched on like seasons of relationships and how sometimes things go awry. And when you think about like what is love? What do you get from love? Well, love, you get security. Like, there's kind of a parental love, there's a brotherly love, there's a sexual love. So there could be times where you are madly in love with, say it's your husband and he's a great provider and a great father, and like you look at him and he is everything that you want out of a father in your life, but for some reason he just doesn't spark that in your loins anymore. What do you do?
I can't answer that.
Yeah, it's a hard answer, and that's why I mean, like, we have all these different needs we need from people, and like I heard this in this very room. This great. He's like a preacher, I believe, and he does this podcast with Ron G, a comedian, and he said something that stuck with me. He said, you got to update your files. A lot of people, they get 10 years down the road in something. You've been chasing that job for 10 years, that wife or husband or children, and like, whatever you're working on in life, you get so carried away in the pursuit of what you're working on that sometimes you turn around and you go, fuck, all that was for nothing. Like, I didn't even want I haven't even wanted this for 6 years. I just used to want this. And I was never honest with myself. And I think a lot of people at that point in their time, they go, well, I got to triple down now. I can't say I wasted 6 years of my life. This is me now. I'm just this guy. And then 10 years after that, you're miserable because you've settled for over 10 years.
It's amazing how much people do that very thing. And I notice that a lot within the Asian community. I usually pick on Filipinos who are pursuing a nursing career because I often find that they don't really want to do it.
Of course not.
And so I was on this date with this girl who was like 3 years into studying nursing, and I'm like, do you want this? She goes, no, I actually want this. I'm like, well, why don't you stop and do this over here instead? Because that's what you said you want. She's like, well, it's only 1 more year. I'm like, that's a year of your life, though.
That's only $30,000 more in debt.
Exactly.
And, yeah, it's
exactly.
We bite off the, like, at some point in time, the risk assessment is, oh, it's 20 grand a year and a year of my time, but after 4 of them, I get X, Y, Z.
Right.
And then, like, that made sense to you before, but maybe in the last 3 years, you've acquired a skill that can make you $200,000 a year, and you have this, you have a friend who can give you some capital, or maybe you're set up in a different, like, the risk at some point, you come to the point where you can't afford not to do something.
Right.
And I feel like in relationships, people ignore that.
Yeah.
And not only that, but then you drag someone else down a road for 10 years that you didn't even want them on. They've been sitting in your passenger seat for 10 years, and every time they roll the window down, you're like, fuck it. Oh, you're cold. Oh, hot again? Cold. You know what I mean? Like, you get this weird struggle with people that you drag into your unhappiness.
Here's a question for you, because I'm going to go somewhere with this. What is the difference between a male friend and a boyfriend? Let's say they're heterosexual.
Sex.
Is that the only difference?
For the most part.
Okay.
Would you cuddle with a male friend? Would you get that feeling of touch
exactly
from a male friend?
That's the thing that I'm driving at ultimately is I believe there's so much more than sex when it comes to relationships that people refuse to acknowledge or just don't acknowledge. And I think that's where people find it okay to like have infidelity sometimes and still stay in that relationship, still stay married, because there's so much foundation there that you can't just get with some random person, outside the relationship.
Well, I say sex because I've had the unfortunate experience of constantly having to tell my guy friends that they're friends. So they have wanted to cuddle or hold my hand or leaned in for a kiss or something where I'm just kind of like, I'd hate to tell you this, but I really was hoping that this would be a friendship to where I don't really hang out with guy friends very often because it's been quite a few circumstances and situations where even now doing comedy, like fans, they're not my fans. A lot of them aren't my fans. There's this one guy who,
But
like,
they're supporters of yours, and
well,
it's good that
right.
you recognize it, but it's also. And then if we're going to talk about the complexity of all the different things that love is, for them, maybe being your fan, maybe being your patron, maybe like that's in some way they're helping provide for you. And like they're
Right.
again, for some people, the feeling of love comes from giving too. You know what I mean? Like it's
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, because the guy I'm dating now, that was one of our issues where like I told him,
it's like I want
hey,
these guys coming to your show.
huh?
Was he weird about guys coming to see you?
No. Besides comedy, it was he he's very giving, and I told him, I indirectly told him like, I want to do things for you as well because I know that's how a lot of relationships fail is when one person is just giving too much and it drains them. And it's like I was like, hey, like if you ever need me to do anything, like for example, like pick him up from work or go clean something. Or I did his laundry the other day. Like because I am a very aggressive woman where I like or intimidating or whatever you want to call me. That where it's like you might be afraid to ask me for certain things. I'm like, tell me. Like I still want to play. The feminist will freak on this. My role as a woman, damn it. Like I like that. I'm not a feminist in that. Like I like it when men pay for dinner, and I've even said that. I'm like, if I ever reach a certain level of success, like I still want a masculine and a feminine energy.
I don't think enjoying a man taking care of you and what's the word for chivalry? I don't think appreciating chivalry makes you anti-feminist.
Right.
I don't think that's what feminism is. I think feminism has been grossly misconstrued because of extremists.
Yes.
So
As for so many other.
But you'd mentioned that role, and it took my mind to a different place, which is like you might not like people hate that term of like a woman's role. What it is stuff that, for whatever reason, maybe society pigeonholes or whatnot. If you love somebody and he's a typical guy filling a typical man role, whatever that means that what he needs from a partner is someone who can clean because he doesn't fucking know how, and someone who can cook for him because he burns toast. And like, so sometimes if you love a person,
You burn toast, don't you?
no, I just thought that was such a random place to
Like-
go, but it makes sense.
but I mean, if you think about it, it's just a thought I had when we were talking is if they are a typical man's man and you love them and what they need from a partner is what feminists hate to call a woman's place, that's just like if I love you and you don't know how to cook, I'm gonna fucking cook for you. As a
Right.
man, I will cook for like. If your partner needs something from you, just because it's anti-feminist doesn't mean like I think it's great. You should take pride in fulfilling your partner's needs, even if
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
womanly. Like
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I've said this before. I started dating him on this. I'm pretty sure it was on this podcast that I was like, I think I'm going to be alone forever because I do think even in gay relationships, whatever, like there's always a masculine and a feminine, but I have so many of both. I have a lot of masculine qualities, like I'm independent. I like my alone time and just like I do a lot of dude things that are just I don't know, but an alpha male, which I thought because I do like a man who plays his role as a man might be turned off by certain characteristics that I have. But you're right, it's a balance.
I
It's
think
a total balance.
I think for a lot of guys, they just need to feel needed.
Okay.
That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Because I was actually on another podcast where it was a girl who was like, "I'm very alpha, and I have a hard time dating. I'm usually single because guys don't know what to do with me. I'm very independent. I don't need anything from you." I'm like, "That's the problem. You just need to make up a need." And the example I gave her was just buy IKEA furniture once a month and make him build it. And that's it.
Yeah,
Like,
we don't want to do a lot. We just want to do for you.
Yeah.
If you get IKEA furniture every day, we're gonna be like, all right, I can't help you anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But like once a month, it's like, oh, I feel needed. Like she needs me to do this because she doesn't know. She's too dumb to understand the instructions. Well, I got to step in here and save her. Like, obviously, that's not the truth.
Eliza has a bit on that.
What?
But it's not even a need. It's an ability to help too. Like if my girl is moving stuff,
Right.
and I'm stronger than her, she might not need help. But if I love you and what you're doing literally costs me a tenth the amount of energy it's costing you right now, just let me carry the box for you. Like I love you. I want to do that for you. Isn't that the point of like I love you. I want to make your life easier.
Okay, I have a question about this though.
I think that's the key though with relationships in general is like making your partner's life easier.
Yeah.
So do you think a lot of men will? This is on the same subject that, for example, I have a girlfriend who has a PhD, and she kept losing her shit because she would be on these dates, and these guys who would only have like only have master's degrees would be like, "Oh, that's so cute. You have a PhD. Oh, that's so cute." Because like, do you feel like that was emasculating to them that this girl? Because this is now we're moving on to no more physical. This is all. This is mental.
It's ego.
Yeah. So would that? Do you think you'd be intimidated by that?
A woman who's more educated? Sorry, go ahead.
I don't get intimidated by it, but it depends if they're browbeating me and making me feel stupid every 2 seconds rather than hearing what I have to say and contribute. Like
Okay.
if I can't speak at the vocabulary that you can, that doesn't mean that I don't have something to contribute information-wise, knowledge-wise. There's still something to be gained from even the least educated person on the block. I feel like there's something to be learned there.
Okay.
There's that. But I don't get intimidated by things that I feel like your average guy might like. I wouldn't mind dating a woman who's taller than me. That doesn't bug me at all. I have, and so it just depends. Like I'm the wrong guy to ask when it comes to being intimidated, but
Okay.
but I have experienced the thing where I'm dating someone who is way more well off than me, and I felt like I couldn't give anything, and that did feel emasculating on some level. But I also didn't have a regular job at the
Right.
time. She had a house. She had like millions of dollars in the bank. Like she had her shit together. And I was just like working, I was struggling working in casting, getting whatever jobs I could. And
Okay.
so I couldn't like quite take her out to the places she wanted to go, which was like omakase. You know what that is? Where you go to a Japanese restaurant and they like
It's like chef's cut of all the sushi.
And
Oh yeah.
that shit's
Oh, yeah.
expensive. And I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I can take you to like Burger King. I can't take you to omakase.
Explain to everyone what omakase is if they don't know what it is.
Well, it's just basically like a 6-course meal where the chef, it's all chef's choices.
Okay.
And so
I see, I
t-
didn't know it as
yeah,
that.
And so I think it's 6 courses, and they just basically give you the freshest fish that they have.
Okay.
And you can't say shit. Like whatever they give you, you're eating.
Chef's choice, right?
Yes, exactly.
Right. I think the one time I did get it, they brought it out on a big platter, and they're like chef's choice omakase. So yeah, I'm sure the different. Okay. Well, yes, absolutely. And if a guy or gal ever treats you to omakase, you gotta let them in your omakase. You know what I'm saying?
Chef's choice. What up?
Okay. So right. Then balance. I think to answer all of that is like balance. Because they're different. People are going to play different roles, and
People have different needs.
people have different
I mean,
needs.
you talk about dating someone who's more like financially well off than you.
Yeah.
That lady can't cuddle herself. You know what I mean? So it's like you
Exactly.
still play a role in her. You know what I mean? Like that's again, what does your partner need? How do you make their life easier?
Right.
And also for her to think, or for anyone who is in that tax bracket, like to find a soulmate or a life partner, and I hate the word soulmate, or just basically a partner. And if you're trying to have someone match that, it's already, you're eliminating the whole world, like for the most part, because we know how small the
I have a
the
question.
rich people of the world are. So
I have a question for you, actually.
Okay.
So, how do you feel if you just started dating someone and immediately they're telling you how to make love to them?
yes, I love this.
It really depends. So
Because I've had
Like-
I've had instances where
like give me the notes. What do you
Sips tea.
like? Give me the note.
Like-
Well, I guess this is what I say. I have this conversation with my buddy who's like trying to negotiate with a club how much he deserves to make, and I say, well, after your first set, you will know what negotiating leg you have to stand on.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get a set in first. If you need, afterward, if you're
Crush.
like, yeah, if I come in, if I crush, maybe hold it with the notes. See what else I got. I got other tricks up my sleeve. I got
Bonus.
other bits. I got things
Yeah.
coming for you. Give me notes when it goes stale.
Exactly.
But if it's not doing it for you off the bat, then honestly, I'm very I'm the kind of person I have to feel it all.
Yeah.
So,
Do you-
No, exactly.
Do you
That-
mind
that-
giving us the story?
Well, I'm gonna be very vague because it's someone that I still talk to. The instance that I'm thinking of specifically, where it's like we had just gotten into this situation, and she's already giving me instructions, and it was new for me because normally people don't do that. But I knew immediately when I experienced it that it felt completely wrong, and I hated it. I don't like when you're telling me what to do with you
May I
when
ask
I barely know you.
questions?
You can ask questions. I don't know if I can answer them all.
That's
I'll try.
okay. So, well, then I'll just talk.
No, ask me questions. I'll try my best.
Well, so it's different because a lot of if you read a Cosmo, it'll say, "Tell him how you want it." You know, so a lot of these women are being told that if he's doing something that
Right. That's
maybe
when you're in a relationship.
or not. But I was gonna say there's also a difference between getting something started and not choke me. There's a difference between, hey, I'd like it a little softer.
that's kind of permission. If it's if it's
Right.
go harder, if it's anything a little out of the ordinary, then that's almost like verbal permission, I think. But yeah, sorry, go ahead. I was
Well, because that's what I like. I don't because it is so vague. I don't know the how
this goes-
intense it is because again, there is some. It's a lot different from like, hey, by the way, my body isn't lubricated enough. Could you go slower?
Yeah.
No, see, it wasn't anything like that.
Right, versus like I want you to bend me over and like take me to Pound Town. Like you're not doing it right. If she's masculating you, like
I guess
there's so many ways
that's-
and routes
it-
you can take from that statement.
It goes back to the whole IKEA thing, right? It's feeling like necessary, feeling like needed, as opposed to just filling a spot. Like, oh, so basically you're following all these things that you've done 1,000 times before, and you're just kind of having me fill in that blank spot for you. Is what it feels
Interesting.
like when you're telling me what to do right off the bat, rather than just organically kind of feeling it
You're
out.
telling me how you liked someone else to fuck you.
Exactly.
I'm about to fuck you how I fuck
Exactly.
you. I'm sorry.
Drops the mic.
Sorry.
No, that's exactly what
Yeah.
it is. That you're
You're telling me how to
summarized it.
replicate someone that you're not with anymore.
Exactly.
Well, because I've been in a situation where we were doing it doggy style, and
Doing the dog.
we're doing the dog, and
Oh.
I was pretty convinced that it was an accident, but like I was really into the sex at that point. That's all I'm gonna say. And then there was a second where like you fellas do this thing where you play with it a little bit. I don't know because it's juicy. This is getting really intense. I think this is the most intense it's ever gotten. But then for a minute, I thought it like there might have been like a little slippage where it was like almost like in my butt, and I stopped immediately and I got out of character, and I was like, "You
What
better."
character were you?
It's Krystle's sex character.
Oh, okay, cool.
No, it wasn't Krystle Chats anymore. It was Krystle's sex goddess.
Okay.
And then I was like, if you honestly just try to slip it in my butt, I'm gonna punch you in your face. And I said that verbatim.
She pulled off her leather choker and was
Because
like,
How did that go?
he was like, I'm not. And then he finished. But because it startled me because I was like, whoop, and I won't say, I'm saving that. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. Cause that's something very like, it's a big deal to me. Like maybe a little finger or something, but my butt, like get away from it. And so it startled me because I was like, that better not have been an attempt.
well, isn't that kind of the fun of the dog though? When the dog is good, it's like
No, absolutely.
you're a swift accident away.
Not if your butt's a virgin. Not if you have a tight butthole.
No, I mean like there's a thrusting, a very minor miscorrection of thrust can go the wrong way. Is what I'm saying. So it's like
so you're saying like it was an accident.
like
He didn't mean-
I
Okay.
think if the dog is good, accidents are prone. You know.
Okay.
So in summary, if it's something that you're
If I-
not comfortable with, then it's by all means say something. Yeah.
Right. And my point is if if I really thought that it was an honest attempt, I would have stopped immediately and been like, "Get the fuck off, get away from me."
But you
I
threatened
was
to
like,
punch him in the face.
because it scared me, and like that was my initial like I guess fight or flight thing. Where
I'm surprised threats of violence didn't completely just cannibalize the whole thing.
No, that's what made him finish faster. Probably was the
yeah,
threat of violence. He's
he
like,
likes my
"Ugh."
aggressive side. No, so I just thought that was okay. That was my story, and again because sometimes I worry about other women who I've heard horror stories of. This girl I used to work with told me, she's like, "Yeah, Krystle, I was giving him head and he really stunk." I was like, "Well, then why didn't you fucking stop?" I'm like,
Because you don't want to embarrass him.
well,
I mean, because I think guys and girls do this.
and that's my point is that that's okay, but like,
maybe we need to take head back to like a, like, you know, that's for occasions. Because now head's just part of the package, but smelling's part of the package too. Like, at the end of the day, we've all got something going on. And I know so many relationships that get in arguments over that kind of like a, you know,
No,
just today.
and there's a huge difference between a guy who like you clearly just worked out. So I'm
Yeah,
sorry if you
there is a
worked out,
difference.
like fuck you, bro. Like get your nasty, smelling nuts away from me. Versus somebody who just might not. You might, pheromones. You just might not prefer their scent.
I try to be smart about it, and if someone's trying to do anything like that with me, I'm like, I need to go shower first. Don't
Right.
try. I've been at work all day.
Right.
Don't
That's
go
such
near
a
me.
good move.
Yeah.
Good move.
You know,
Yeah.
and I feel like more people need to just do that, and you'll be all right.
Honesty.
You know, and
Right.
both men and women need to like be cognizant of that.
And I've been on the flip side. I've been in a situation with my guy where like he's like, I need to take a shower, and I didn't care. Like he didn't just work out, but he's like, oh, I've been out all day, and I'm just. Some people like you like their stink scent, where I'm just
but
like,
you know,
I'm down.
But
Like
I think you're hitting on something interesting.
nasty.
I think it's important to communicate these things. Like, especially if
Yeah.
we're talking about something where you're already in a relationship.
Right.
I feel like it's important to communicate that stuff because it will not get fixed
Mm-hmm.
unless you say something. And I feel like there are a lot of people out there who just don't say anything and they just deal with it. And I
Yes.
think that's a major problem. And it creates a little bit of resentment. And you don't want to do something because of that smell. And it's like, if
Mm-hmm.
you just told them, maybe they could correct that.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of this stemmed from that question because you unfortunately had to be too vague to where it's like we don't know what direction she was giving you, so we can't take her side or your side.
No, well, I'm just going with what he said earlier. It's like
Okay.
don't tell me what to do until we at least have had tried this a couple times. Let me fuck up a couple times,
Okay.
and then you can tell me how I fucked up.
Yeah, because it was the very first time that this happened.
Yeah, but like
Okay.
it seemed to me that she was just used to taking charge that way, and I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, but I like to take charge also, and I don't know how to just let you do this. So
Yeah.
Oh, that's a difference that might be irreconcilable. I mean,
Right.
I mean, I'm fine with people taking charge,
Mm-hmm.
women. So the thing about it is, it's like day one. Let's not have a whole conversation right away. Like, let's
Right.
feel this out organically. I mean, call me old school, but like,
No, I totally agree with you.
you know,
I won't say whether it's my current guy or not, but I will say that one situation, it was a guy who I really liked a lot, and
it's your current guy.
starting off, so especially now, I'm so big on physical chemistry. Like if that ain't there, like bye. Because that was the unfortunate thing with this Sherman Oaks guy. Is like we had such great physical chemistry, but there were so many other red flags. But that was the one thing that I had been in on. My other relationships lacked in that department so much where I was like, I really need to make sure the physical part is important and you need both. But so the guy, we had good chemistry the first time, good chemistry the second time, but unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, depending on who you ask, is very high sex drive. So I had to be like, it wasn't necessarily a sexual direction, it was just a sex direction. Like, hey, I can't handle, this much, this many times. So it was like that whole thing where it's like we had already done it a few times where I was like, listen, it's going to have to be a little less than what you want. And then that was my whole thing. And but to your point, it wasn't the first time, it wasn't the second time. It was like after I realized like he really likes doing this a lot. Or
Maybe he just likes you a lot.
yeah, he does. I mean, or does. I'm like, no comment. Yeah, so, okay, interesting. So, You have something to say to that?
No.
No.
keep it-
Okay.
Communication is important, but like I just like leaving some mystery at the top. Is all I'm
Absolutely.
saying.
Oh, I
Yeah.
completely agree with that.
And-
And plus, you don't want your first. I remember I was in a relationship for 2 years with a guy, and after our first kiss, he goes, "Puh." He's like, "Would you just eat onions or something?" And I dated him for 2 years. So, and yeah, you better believe I still have that story.
I had one
Oh, I
instance.
thought you were gonna say onion
I had,
breath.
I had one instance with a girl who I'd liked for a while, and when we started making out and fooling around, she started telling me about other guys she used to tease,
Oh, gross.
and it really fucked me up. And I was like,
Oh.
why are you telling me all this information? That's not like. And I've found in the last few years that there's a lot of women who are just very overt about their history, and I'm like, I don't need to know all that. Like, not right now. Like, tell me later on.
I had to tell my girlfriend that in front, like her dude was like walking behind us, and she's like, "Yeah." She's one of those girls who was like the online Playboy girls, and she liked printing out naked pictures of herself and giving them to her boyfriends, and she was on her current boyfriend, and she was talking about a picture that she had given to her last boyfriend, and I like he was walking behind us, and I was like, "Stop doing that!" Like she
Yeah.
was making me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot." She's like, "I really just don't give a fuck." And I was like, "Well, can you just give a fuck around me?
Yeah.
Because this is making me like quiver." And I was like, "No, don't do that."
Yeah.
I had a friend who was in a very unhealthy relationship, and at some point, a couple of us that like he works with us, and we were all always frustrated with their problems. He was, and at some point, you have to realize some people just like it. Some people like to be the brunt of another person, or that's like that makes that like some people are gluttons for romantic punishment, and it's kind of weird because like you want to like
Or it's all they know.
you're treating this guy like shit, and he's like, yeah, it's just how I like to be treated, and it's
Yeah.
so like at some point I always say like treat people better, but at the same time some people just want to be like some people want to be mistreated. I don't know, chime in. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I 100% agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I mean, because we're all kind of raised in a fucked up manner, and so it's just like, does your fucked up match my fucked up? Cool, awesome. You
Well,
know?
or for me, I think for the longest time, I always say I grew up in a household where I didn't really get to watch two people that were in love. So I never really knew what it looked like. And I remember that was the most beautiful thing a guy's ever said to me on a date was, I want what my parents have. He's like, my parents, like if we go to a party or anywhere and they're sitting at the table, you could just still see them like looking at each other like they're madly in love, and like it's gross and we're all grossed out because they're so in love with each other. And I just thought, was like, holy shit, that is so cool. Another girl that I work with, shout out to Bree, she said, like my dad has been obsessed with my mom for like 30 years or 20 years, whatever, however long they've been married. And it's like, yeah, that's so cool. So some kids get to see it, and that's their standard. And the fact that she said, my mom and dad have that. Some of us who didn't grow up, like I would never say, what will my mom and dad have? It's going to end in divorce, and there's just a bunch of crazy shit in the house. Like, no, never once have I ever uttered the words I want what my mom and dad have. So, yeah, and I think a lot of those people who grew up in similar situations that mine, or maybe never even had two parents, they just only create whether what TV shows they watch or what they saw at their friends' houses or whatever. So it's like you just never know what their foundation is.
Right.
So
lying is okay. Bring it back all the way to the beginning. I mean, it depends on the circumstance, right? Like, okay, let's say,
remember, I said it's gonna eat them alive.
Let's say you're out with your boyfriend. I mean, this is something I don't think you do, but it has happened to me. You're out with your boyfriend, and he glanced at a girl, and you ask, "Is she hotter than me?" And he says, "No."
See, I would never ask that.
Okay, but let's say you did. Would you want him to lie or tell the truth?
But that's so not.
A lot of guys have been in
same.
that kind of situation, though.
But he better say, because I better be the hottest girl in the world in his eyes.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you should lie. Right?
Yeah. I've said that too. I remember, I think I was talking to Jason about that topic about food. How okay, yeah, it tastes okay. It wasn't that bad. Like if I knew I messed up a meal, like, tell me it wasn't that bad. It's like, an asshole would be like, God, you suck. That was terrible. And then it would hurt my feelings and I would cry. Yeah, you probably should have lied to me.
Yeah.
Probably should have lied to me. Oh, and so I was trying to make it a smooth transition right into it whenever we were talking about stinking and all that stuff. Because I like to try to do a little healthy tip of the week. And this week, I wanted it to be about sweating. Because I felt like it was appropriate. It was appropriate because of give us a little bit about your sweaty background and what you do with
sweaty
with
background?
martial arts and whatnot.
Oh, you got to be more specific. What's your question about it?
Everything. What kind I don't know too much about it. I've just known that you're extremely talented from what I've seen on YouTube. And how did you get into it? Where did you start? At what
Oh,
age?
I thought
Like,
you were asking me specifically
martial
about
arts.
sweating. I was like,
No. Your background that makes you sweat, which is martial arts.
Okay, that's more specific and helpful. So I started martial arts when I was 12 years old. The first time I did a front handspring at all, or attempted one, was I was in 5th grade.
Okay.
I went into a handstand and tried to get my feet over, and I fell straight onto my back, and it was a lot of pain. And I'm like, let's try that again. And then I kept doing it until I landed on my feet.
Wow.
I started martial arts at 12. I started doing gymnastics,
What kind of martial arts though?
taekwondo, and hapkido.
Okay.
And I did a variety of martial arts after that, but mostly minimal. Taekwondo and hapkido are the ones I stuck with. And around 14 or 15, I started doing a little bit of gymnastics. It was mostly just kind of me teaching myself. And at 21 or 22 is when I started to take it really seriously and started working with a trampoline and whatnot. And around 23, 24, I started hitting the gym like very regularly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I try to just do something from all of that. And recently I started doing ballet. In the past couple of weeks, I've been bad. I haven't been going to my classes as much just because I've been busy with YouTube. But I'm studying ballet, and I took my first jazz class about 2 weeks ago.
You're really flexible, yeah? You would say that?
I would say that I have capabilities with martial arts related things, but I'm not super flexible. I have a splits master, and I try to like do it as often as possible, but
Okay.
I get to about 165 degrees.
So are you in a beginner's ballet class?
Yes. No, well, sort of, yes.
Yeah, because somebody with your background would be able to like hang in an intermediate ballet. I mean, obviously you need to learn positioning and like foot positions and postures and all of that, but because of your background, I would imagine it'd be a lot easier.
My
for you.
my background helps and hinders me in different ways because I'm bringing martial arts into it, and so there are certain areas where it's extremely helpful, and other areas where it's a big hindrance because I'm trying to do something I would do in a martial arts class, and she's like, no, it's got to be more graceful than that. So that kind of thing will happen. But like it's called Align, and so I'm in Align 4 now. If that gives you a sense as to where I'm at, I'm not about to go and do a show.
Right,
But like,
still,
but it's like just a regular practice, another thing in my repertoire.
that's cool.
So yeah, but the most I sweat is when I'm wearing a weight vest. I'm wearing a weight vest for like doing jumps and stuff like that, or running, or whatever the
Okay.
case is. Then like I take it off and I'm like completely drenched. But other than that, unless I'm like running hard in the sun or hiking in Hawaii, I'm not really
Is
concerned
that an
about sweat.
Asian thing or what? Because it takes a lot for me to start sweating too.
I think it's an Asian thing.
Do you?
Whereas white people sweat like that.
Do
you
you
know?
like the sauna?
I don't know. It's
Okay, because I was gonna ask dry or wet sauna.
wet.
Really?
Yes,
What
hate-
about you, Alex?
I
Do
hate
you
dry
have
saunas.
do you have a sauna preference?
Not a sauna man, unfortunately.
Okay. 'Cause
Yeah,
I prefer dry.
I don't normally go into the sauna to begin with, but if I do have to choose one, I would elect for a wet sauna.
Okay. For me, I feel like there's something cool about having the discipline of staying in a dry sauna long enough to break that sweat. And once you get to that part of it, the sweat is so detoxifying and it feels so good.
You should be careful with that. I don't think it's the best thing for you,
Why?
for your
Well,
brain.
first of all, I don't do it that often.
Okay.
And then
They say the max you should do is like 20 minutes, I think.
right, and but you're supposed to do it 20 minutes and then you go out,
Mm-hmm.
cool down, then go back in. I was like, looks like it's a whole.
Yeah, just be careful.
Okay. All right. Well, I haven't, and that was actually the reason why I picked this topic today, because yesterday I was finally able to work out after, God, I don't know, it's been like a couple of weeks, and I feel like that's one of the things that has, besides genetics, keep me young looking, is that I've always been active, like my whole entire life. There's been periods, like now, where I'm not consistently working out, and you too. I know.
Yeah, it's happened to me.
You and I are close to the same age, and we look.
The past week and a half, 2 weeks has been tough with working out for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it happens sometimes, but the thing to keep in mind is that it's like 80% diet. I mean, it depends what your objective is. If your
Mm-hmm.
objective is to just look good, it's 80% diet. working out is of course significant, it's 20%, but it's diet more than anything. If you're trying to do what
Right.
I'm doing, which is like make gains in terms of muscle growth, martial arts, gymnastics, then then it has to be very often.
And I couldn't agree with that more. It's even this week alone, last week because it's Tuesday, I started off pretty low carb, and then
By the end of the week,
my
it's just-
boyfriend gifted my coworkers and I with a croissant and like a box of donuts, and then literally the next day I felt like my body looked destroyed. So then the 2 days following the donut day, I cut carbs again, and then I feel like, oh, look at that. It's that for me, it's my genetics, and it's that fast. I know it's not like that for everybody, but that's how fast it is for me, and that's with no working
I
out.
feel like there is it's mental on some level there. Like if I eat chocolate right now, I'll feel like I gained 5 pounds and I can feel it in my sides. But that's not actually what's going on.
No.
You know, I think there's a
Well-
lot of mental in there.
Well, I mean, but I think chocolate's a lot different than eating carbs. You know, I mean, I know that sugar in chocolate is carbs, but it's also for the most part gluten free, which I think there's a huge difference, and this is a whole nother podcast episode, is between like dark chocolate carbs versus white bread, gluten. So,
So
but
what's ultimately your health advice though?
the reason why I wanted to do sweat more is because there's something, I don't know if it is just the same thing that the serotonin that you're releasing in your brain when you're working out, because I've worked out where I haven't really sweat and it didn't feel as satisfying for me, because I used to do CrossFit quite a bit, and I remember the one thing a lot of people would say to me is like, you barely broke a sweat. You didn't even sweat, which was actually true. There'd be some workouts where I'd sweat, but it wasn't nearly as like the same kind of a sweat as I should have been. I was half-assing it.
I don't go off of sweat. I go off of how tired I feel. If I feel like I've exhausted my body, then I'm like, okay, that was good.
But don't you feel like if you're exhausting your body, you're probably gonna be sweaty?
It doesn't necessarily correlate.
Okay.
Yeah, correlation is not causation. So it could just be hot outside and you sweat. If that's all you're going for.
Right, I'm sweating right now because of the temperature.
Okay,
Because
so
I like
Yeah.
the dry sauna. Too,
Yeah.
So.
it doesn't necessarily correlate with losing a ton of weight. So
I had something to chime in, and I was like, nah, it's not that important.
Do you feel better after a sweaty workout, or you think you agree with him?
So I come from a martial arts background too, not like into childhood, but my whole adult life. I can't train now because I had a stroke actually in a jujutsu class. It was a party. It was a good time. But when I lift weights, I've lifted weights for so long. Like I used to be really into bodybuilding and everything. And so it's like when I lift weights, I'm so efficient with my body. I hardly ever sweat, but I'll fill up I know I'm really good at it. But when I do jujitsu, I'll sweat through 3, and I feel good after both, right? I mean, it's just.
I think you're also dealing with stress in jujitsu. It's like the stress of like trying to pin the other person.
Well, and then there's a lot of fear to it.
Well, exactly.
Like you're it kicks it when someone's pushing your face. If you're being smothered, you're gonna sweat. Whether it's
Yeah, exactly.
it could be Antarctica.
Yeah.
It's you've got fear response. That's a great point too. But I'm the kind of person, cardio wise, I can't do 5 minutes of running. And it's not even a sweat thing, but jujitsu I could do for an hour straight.
Yeah.
It's like a boredom thing. But the sweat, I don't know. I just I don't sweat because I can't train anymore. I don't have sweaty workouts like I used to. It's mostly weightlifting, but I still have a barometer for it. You feel it. You feel a pump. You feel how tired you are. You know how much sleep you need. How tired. Recovery that's necessary.
Yeah, with weightlifting in particular, I don't think you even necessarily sweat as much, but you definitely
Really?
feel a burn. Like you're like, wow, my chest is exhausted from that bench press,
Okay.
and you don't necessarily sweat a bunch like you might from Taibo.
I remember that was actually one of the, and I guess the final point of it will be to try it and see how you feel, because just like anything else, it's always a case by case scenario. I remember that was an interesting point of CrossFit for me, because I was lifting and I couldn't believe how sweaty I was.
But that's lifting for time. So CrossFit is a
yeah,
round thing.
that's
When you're
true.
lifting weights, you're resting
true.
between sets because you want to give your body time to get back to it. CrossFit is
But there's the Oli part of CrossFit as well.
Yeah, and during that, are you like if
That's true.
you're taking reps and you're going back and forth with a partner, you're probably not sweating as hard as you are
true.
during like the WOD, you know. So
Right.
you know, it's with weightlifting. That's another part is to actually weightlift to a level you need to. You have to rest.
And what is
Yeah.
workout of the day
Yeah.
for the non-CrossFit people?
My whole thing with people is, just exercise regularly and make sure you've got good technique and eat right. Like, that's it.
Okay.
I mean, sweating or not sweating is not necessarily my concern. It's like, okay, do exercise as much as you can and make sure you've got good technique while you do it. Because there's a lot of people I see at the gym who have terrible technique. I'm like,
CrossFit.
you're going to hurt yourself so bad. And I try not to talk to people because, like, who am I? You don't know who I am.
Yeah.
And so I try not to give advice. Sometimes I do. But, like, my whole thing is there's YouTube. And just watch a bunch of different videos and compare notes from all those different people and figure out what works for you. Because you don't want to have an injury from exercise.
Or to piggyback on that, like, because you said workout, and I think even just being active, period. And I think that's probably where I was trying to go to with the whole sweating thing, or even if it's like, if you get your diet in check and you even just start walking, it's like so much better than just not doing anything. Because like for some people, they're so obsessed with their diet. To be on the flip side is just, and then they're just not working out. That it's like that's not right either. Although that is the easier part, or if it's easier for you if you have that part in check, but your poor body, it's gonna eventually,
On a related note, I have a first world problem I wish I could complain about, or I want to complain about. I wish I could get my watch to stop telling me to stand up.
Oh, it does.
Do you have an Apple Watch? Like when you an Apple
There's
Watch,
not a way to
I don't know,
turn
but
it.
it always tells me to stand up. I'm like, bitch, I'll do what I want. Like, stop trying to tell me how to. I'll work out when I feel like
Okay.
working out.
Stand up.
No, I'm saying it tells you.
Did it tell you now?
No,
Stand
it's
up.
not.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
Don't stand up.
I'm saying. I'm tired of devices telling you how to live. That's my whole thing. Like, you ever use Waze? And it's like, are you driving right now? I'm like, it's not your fucking problem. Let me decide if I can put in the directions or not.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, fine. You're a control freak.
Waze will bother you if you
kidding.
don't need, like if it knows your phone is moving at car speed, but you're not using Waze, it'll chime in. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying like, let's say I'm on the road, right? And I someone says, oh, you need to be here. I'm like, okay, cool. I just try to put it in real fast. It's like, oh no, you're driving. Are you a passenger
Oh,
or
it'll
are you
do
driving?
that.
And it'll stop you from putting in directions. It's like,
Yep.
unless you say that you're a passenger.
No,
Or
Waze. You're just
or
here for
Waze
service.
will automatically ask if you're going home or to work if you have
Oh,
it
that's the
saved in your
worst.
feature, and it's like, no, I'm not fucking going home. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not. And then I think one time I made the mistake. It asked me, "Are you going to the same location that you were going to?" And for me, the answer was yes. And then it took me like 30 minutes to the wrong direction because I just assumed that it was because it was definitely in Orange County to LA. But if you go the wrong direction,
Right.
Take a wrong freeway. In
like if you're
LA.
trying to go to the west side and they take you to the east side, or on the flip side, west side,
No.
and they take you to the east
But
side.
my
it's
my
just-
main complaint is this Big Brother and technology. Is like if you're in your car and let's say you're with your boyfriend, right? And he's got some music on his phone he wants to play, and you try to hook up the Bluetooth, it'll be like, oh, you can't do that right now because you're driving. It's like, why? Why can't you just let me
But we
dictate the
can-
Bluetooth?
Maybe
But
I'm
we
in a
can-
Tesla, bitch. Maybe I'm not driving.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being driven
But we
right
can
now.
eat and drive. Yeah, you don't see a little. I noticed you're eating while you're driving. Could you please stop that? Wouldn't that be
Exactly.
crazy? Cars are going to start saying that to us. And then so just to finish up, I do want to thank you for first of all being here,
Yeah, thank you.
and
for having me.
also for having me on your channel. And I just quickly want to talk about. I can hear my mouth doing that weird.
It's the worst. It's the worst.
That's actually me if you're listening.
Oh,
It's all me.
excuse me, guys. Sorry. So Jaby does reaction videos to a bunch of Bollywood things, not just film. I spit now. Sorry.
So I
yeah,
have three different channels. We do trailer reactions, movie reviews, occasionally short films, vlogs, and sometimes every once in a great while a podcast. So we do a lot of different things. The majority of the content is trailer reactions, and then second to that is movie reviews.
And can you just give us a really like a quick summary on how you got into that?
Okay. My brother started doing reactions first as a joke, and then he realized that there is something serious there that's worth exploring, and he started doing it seriously, and his channel blew up. And I was working in casting, and I wanted to get out of casting. And so I started doing reactions, movie reviews, a bunch of stuff, and I was just kind of fishtailing.
Does he do Bollywood as well?
No.
Okay.
He just does American. So I was fishtailing, figuring out what my channel was about. And because initially it was just for my acting stuff. And then what happened was I was in a relationship that was on its way out. And once it ended, I ended it because I was unhappy. But even though I ended it, I was really depressed from that ending because there was a little girl involved. She was basically my daughter, and she was no longer my daughter. And I was trying to figure out a way to get my headspace correct. And so one of the things I was doing was reactions. And so I decided to make that the one thing I was doing because, what's his name? Steve, what's her name? The famous black guy who Medea. What's his
Tyler
name?
Perry.
Tyler Perry. He has a Facebook video that's somewhere out there where he says, pick one thing to do and make that one thing work. It'll open up the doors for everything else. But if you try to do everything, you'll get nothing done. Just pick one thing and make it work. So I'm like, okay, let me listen to
That's really profound advice.
let me listen to Tyler Perry. And I chose reactions. I'm like, I can do that every single day. And it'll require me to talk to different people all the time because I'm always like you. I'm bringing guests on all the time. And so I just made that my thing. And but part of the issue was I was doing just American content, and I felt like I was slowly becoming irrelevant, whereas my brother was the cream of the crop. I had 16,000 subscribers. He had like 300,000 subscribers. And so I found these 2 Indian videos.
You
I'm
don't
like,
want to
well,
plug your brother?
oh, he's the real Rejects. So
Okay.
anyone who knows me knows who my brother is.
I never knew.
Yeah. So he
never knew.
yeah, it's Greg Alba on YouTube, and he goes by
Okay.
youtube.com/therealrejects. But anyway, I found these 2 Indian videos, and I thought, well, no one's doing that. Let me explore that and show that to my American audience to just give them something different. And inadvertently, like Indians discovered me, and they said, "Oh, can you look at this? Can you look at this?" And it just kind of blew up from there. And so I went from having 1,000 subscribers a month to 1,000 subscribers a day. And so, yeah, we're about to hit 1.1 million on that channel. And
That's
yeah.
why I wanted to say thank you and I'm so happy to have you here because I have at least 1,000 followers that are just because of you.
Okay.
And there's a couple of kids who will like always comment on every single picture or they might mention you or something. And I remember someone asked me this. He's like, you didn't always have this many followers. And I was like, I was on Jaby Koay.
Koay.
You got it, Jaby Koay.
Jaby
Koay.
Koay.
I don't just say Jaby.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying your name incorrectly, so I have a way I like to say your name for the past,
You can just keep
6
saying
months.
say it that way then. If
No,
you
because it's totally wrong, and I don't want to say it wrong.
I don't.
I'm
I
gonna
don't
learn.
mind.
Well, I'll start saying Jaby okay.
That's okay.
No, Jaby. I was on Jaby's channel, and yeah, I was like, oh, I have an Indian following now. It's great, and no, but it's funny because every single time I see our fans now, right? Like I'm like, oh, that's because of Jaby. So it's fun because people say that they're like, oh, if you I guess it's clout, you're gonna be on this person's channel, then they're gonna get you followers, and I was like, no, because I've had other people like post and tag me. It wasn't until your channel where all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, I got 300 followers for being, just
Yeah.
today. And it's like, thank you. So and it's so fun because it isn't just an American following now. It's like
Right.
so,
No, I do think I'm very, very fortunate in that sense because I love my audience, and I do believe my audience loves me, and in a way that is unlike a lot of other YouTubers. I feel like I have a very special relationship with my audience in that way, and they're very cool people. So
Well, and I lived with an Indian girl for 3 years in Texas. So I have a special place in my heart for just Indian people in general because there isn't a large Indian community in Texas, but I have a very close relationship to the Indian community because of her.
Yeah.
So for me, it was exciting because we were actually in the last episode talking about how if you watch Jaby Koay's comedy that maybe if you have a Filipino friend, you'll feel a connection to the comedy. And if you don't, maybe not. So because of her, shout out to Coel, I love you. I feel connected to that community.
if you mess up my name, don't ever feel bad. Like I deliberately mess people's names up because I think it's hilarious. Like I have a friend named Kiana Madani,
Koay.
but I always call her Kiani Madani because it rhymes. I made a new friend recently. Her name is Jackie Zender, but I call her Jackie Xanadu
Okay.
because it just amuses me.
Jaby Koay. Well, and for me, it's hard because I'm relearning because I've been saying it wrong for months.
Just keep saying it
Jaby
wrong.
Koay.
It's fine.
And because I'll end on this negative story. The reason why I go by Krystle Chats is because I was so devastated by this host who in the worst way butchered my name to where I feel like there's no way I'm going to win this crowd because they know I'm a nobody because they're like, she's like, Muras? Oh, I knew I'd mess it up. And I just did not like that energy walking on. So ever since then, it like kind of.
Just lean in. Like Zach,
Yeah,
well,
lean
I
in.
can never say his name correctly. Zach Galifianakis.
Galifianakis.
Yeah, I've never said his name correctly ever. But he makes fun of that. Like he just leans into it.
You ever heard that old Mike Birbiglia bit where a host brings him out as Mike Bahuski? Like, yeah, just lean into it. Like, yeah, man, own that. That's something fun for when I personally go on stage, I like something that's not planned, just something to happen, just so I have to react and it kind of acclimate. If someone messes up my name, it's just the first thing I get to talk about. How lucky are you? You get to burn 30 seconds of time talking about something.
There's this podcast I used to listen to, and there was this guy who came on.
You're all positive.
There's a guy who came on semi-regularly. His name is Asterios Kokonos. But someone called in and called him Mysterious Coconuts. And he immediately went to Twitter and changed his Twitter handle to Mysterious Coconuts or something like that. Because he just leaned in. He's like, hey, whatever.
That's hilarious,
It's funny,
yeah.
you know.
All right. I'm Krystle Moo Ross.
Yeah.
Moo Ross.
Krystle Muras.
But for now, I'm Krystle Chats, guys. And that's about the end of our episode. We're out of time. And again, so honored. Thank you so much. Alex, thank you for being here. Remember, we are the Comedy Pop-Up. I am Krystle Chats. This is the Healthy Gossip, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks so much for being here.
Of course.